This program, of course, is presented by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most widely read, widely sold, and respected wrestling magazine in the world today.
This is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. We've got a lot to talk about. Brian Solomon, my co-host, has got the week off. Going to be joined in a little bit here by Righteous Reg, PWI contributing a writer, and we're going to be talking about the two big shows in the last few weeks from the two big companies. Of course, I'm talking about AEW's Full Gear pay-per-view, where we got a new world champion and a lot of other news coming from that show, which was pretty widely praised. Another great outing from AEW. And we're also going to talk about Survivor Series, one of WWE's, big four pay-per-views, which maybe didn't get as much praise. And I was there in person, so I've got that perspective. Some good on that show, some not so good. And Reg and I basically talk about how this really tells the story of AEW and WWE in 2021 and going forward. We also talk a bit about Big E and his outing, his first kind of outing in that main event spot as a WWE champion, headlining a major pay-per-view. Reg, who's written a lot about Big E, kind of talks about how he thinks he's doing and whether he is the future of WWE. Also, a smaller but still very newsworthy item coming out of the weekend of tapings from WWE here in New York last weekend was the attack on Seth Rollins from a fan on Raw the night after Survivor Series. And thankfully, nobody hurt out of that one. And the young man was arrested. But we take a step back and talk a bit about kind of the bigger picture about what incidents like that mean and what is the right way to handle them in 2021. And maybe that's not the same as it was for many, many years beforehand. So stay tuned. Also, after all that, we got another fun interview here coming up, coming back to the PWI podcast. A guest I got the honor to speak to once before, and now it's Candace Cordelia's turn with Ring of Honor's own Shane Taylor. And he's got a lot to talk about. The head of Shane Taylor Promotions in ROH talks about the future of ROH. And as we know, maybe uncertain to say the least. They've got their big show of the year, Final Battle, coming up, and it's certainly apropos because even Ring of Honor is kind of billing it as the end of an era, as we know by now. They're shutting down at the end of this year after Final Battle. Say they're going to retool early in 2022 and come back in some form. I guess around April. So Shane talks a bit about that uncertain future, what it means for him. Also talks a lot about black representation in in Ring of Honor. I know that's a cause that has been important to him over the years. He's always been outspoken about it, and talks about his own future, including maybe taking a backstage role down the line. So you'll want to stay tuned and listen to that. Right now, let me tell you real quick about both the current issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the next issue, which might be out by the time you're listening to this. You can still pick up the special Women in Wrestling issue. It is our January 2022 issue available now. It includes the first ever PWI Women's 150 ranking of the top 150 women in wrestling. And before long, I think December 2nd, the digital edition arrives for our next issue, and completing the trilogy of rankings that begins with PWI 500. It is the second annual Tag Team 50. A lot of fun to put this one together. Really proud of how this has come together in the last couple of years. This now, the second edition. You're going to want to check it out. And there's a lot more. I'll give you a little bit of a preview of what's going to be in this. I guess don't want to give too many spoilers away. But I mentioned when talking to Reg that we've got an interview that Reg conducted with the WWE World Heavyweight Champion Big E in this issue. As I said, the Tag Team 50 and a lot more. So you're going to want to go and pick this one up. Get both of them. Get them all. Go to pwi-online.com and subscribe. We are now officially in the holiday season. So why not get that wrestling fan in your life a subscription to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the oldest and really only name in wrestling magazines here in the U.S. We are now in our 40, what are we up to, 42 years, something like that, and still going strong, putting out more issues than we have in a long time, tons of new projects. You don't want to miss any of it. Go to pwi-online.com, subscribe there, get half off the cover price. Whether you want the print edition or the digital edition will get to you a lot faster. It's got some cool interactive features that you'll only find in the digital edition. But of course, if you want that magazine in your hands, that is our bread and butter. You can pick that up too. Whichever you do, you can save half off the cover price by subscribing. So please do that over at pwi-online.com. You could also subscribe to the podcast there. You can follow us on social media there. You could pick up a PWI shirt, also a great gift idea for the holiday season. And you could also subscribe to the free PWI weekly newsletter. Again, place to go is pwi-online.com. Filling in for Brian, Righteous Red.
Thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here.
All right. Well, thanks again. So a busy couple of weeks since the last podcast. We've done both major American companies, AEW and WWE, both had pretty major pay-per-views. And I thought it would be fun, not just to review them, but kind of compare and contrast. I think the story of the two pay-per-views is kind of the story of AEW and WWE. AEW had a show that I think was widely praised. It was exciting. It was newsworthy. They were making stars. The stars that they have were over. And basically, I think
they sent home fans happy.
You just stole my next sentence. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, fans left with a good taste in their mouth. And Survivor Series really was kind of the polar opposite. And there was some good stuff on Survivor Series. But I think at the end of the night, fans left kind of feeling deflated, unsatisfied. That was certainly the case with the people I was with, and kind of the mood of the Barclays Center, and even the train ride home from Brooklyn. I think there was just a feeling of like, meh. I mean, not the worst show you ever seen, but again, just kind of deflating, and really encapsulates WWE's 2021 stars that aren't over nearly as much as they should be. Kind of confounding finishes. Dumb angles, needless comedy, just everything that seems to be WWE getting in its own way was apparent throughout the night. What was your take on either or both shows?
Survivor Series is interesting. I think, like you said, it kind of encapsulates exactly everything that WWE has been doing this year. I think they had I wouldn't say the best lead-in excitement to this, but people were ready for something big. I think because WWE, when they do a big show, they usually have some kind of big angle, some kind of big ending. Brock Lesnar showed up at SummerSlam. They always have something like this. So a lot of people, most people, it seems, in the crowd and online, felt like The Rock was going to somehow make some kind of appearance here, because it feels like for the last 6 months, legit, WWE has been tweeting. They have been putting out videos. Everything that they have been talking about has been The Rock. They have been tagging The Rock. They have been giving it up to The Rock. Like, we need you, this 25th anniversary. So people were excited for, I think, that more than anything, just the prospect of any kind of Rock appearance, be it live there in the building, a video, some kind of acknowledgement that, hey, it's been 25 years. I'm here. You guys, we appreciate it. Maybe setting up this match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania coming up. But that just didn't happen. The show is just a Raw. It's just a long version of Raw on pay-per-view.
Yep.
They're continuing really slow angle. They're continuing angles that people already don't care about. They tied the whole show with Vince and an egg, and it's just like... because
that's what WWE's been missing the last couple of years. An egg mystery.
Exactly. Just like, man, they shows... You know what would have made Raw 2 weeks ago better? If there was an egg angle. I would have liked it better. Like, no, dude. What is going on here? It starts to feel like when the show's going bad. Like, we need a McMahon to come save it, and we don't need a McMahon to come save it, and especially not in this way. So, like, people were upset. They were upset from the beginning because they switched Charlotte and Becky to be the first match, and that was most people's main event. At least that match. Yeah.
Not to interrupt, but I think they ended up doing them a favor because Biggie and Roman, and we'll talk more about it, they put on a fine match, but they had a big hill to climb because the crowd was so dead by that point. Becky and Charlotte had an alive, energized, red-hot crowd. At the beginning of the night, I was taken aback by how excited those Brooklyn fans were. They were loud. They were passionate. By the end of the night, it was a completely different crowd.
Right. Yeah. And I talked about that yesterday on Twitter of how the main event, someone tweeted how that match should have been the main event. I'm like, from the sounds of it, it was the main event from everything that happened, like they gave that energy, the energy you would need for the main event. It was there, it was presented, hot angle, hot match. Like, it worked. It was the first match, but that's on WWE now, it seems, at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I mean, the being the so-called curtain jerker isn't what it used to be. I mean, more frequently they do put a big match in that number one spot. Very often they put the number two match in the opening spot. We saw it at WrestleMania when they opened with Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley. So I don't see it as any kind of slight. I do think it was the match with the most hype, the most anticipation, and you could argue the most star power too. Certainly with Becky being in the match, but I don't have a huge. Again, I think they ended up doing them a favor because they got a hot crowd. But you bring up a few good points. The thing about The Rock is so confounding because they sort of created this problem for themselves.
Yes.
There was just no need to do it, right? I mean, like
classic WWE. That's what they do: create their own problem.
Yeah. It was the 25th anniversary of The Rock's debut, but not having The Rock there, nor even having any kind of like video promo or anything. Why even acknowledge it? It's not something that most fans on their own even would have known. So why? And you're in New York and you're promoting his movie and they've got these rock
in New York. I know the New York
yeah.
crowd's not going to take this lightly. You know it. You've been there. This is quote unquote your home. They say,
I've got to give them the benefit of the doubt that and I think there is some reporting out there about this. Certainly they wanted him there. Short of that, I've got to think they tried to get him to record something. That said, I don't know that they did, because if they did, I can't imagine that they couldn't have put that together. I mean, The Rock's been doing junkets for weeks now, these video junkets promoting the movie. Would it really have been that hard to get him to cut a 1-minute promo acknowledging his 25th anniversary and putting it up? If they didn't do it, shame on them. And
then the show was like sponsored by his movie too.
Yeah, so like, he's all over it. And again, it wasn't like fans on their own organically would have expected The Rock to be there. Me going into that show, knowing that there was some crossover with the Battle Royal, the Rock Battle Royal, and all this stuff. I had in the back of my mind, it's a possibility, but I did not expect it. But by the end of the night, I was thinking, well, they're promoting this so heavily. Maybe he is here. Who knows? And of course, he wasn't. So again, just another major problem. But let's talk about a few things. Becky and Charlotte, I thought was really, really well done. I think most people are talking about it as the match of the night. I think they did. I was concerned about this because of the real life animosity here, and I think some of that's been overblown too. But clearly they were trying to play into that, and my worry was, especially at the Survivor Series and the history with the Survivor Series, that they were going to try to do some kind of work shoot or something like that. I think they did work a stiffer match than they otherwise would have, but not anything that took it too far. And at the end of the day, they just had a really good match and an intense match. And I think it exceeded expectations. And again, one of my takeaways is, watching the match was, again, why did they turn Becky heel? These fans.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all.
It was such a reminder of how over she was,
It's she's really honing into that. I don't want to say a tweener role, but it's like an Austin like of like, even when she's bad, everyone's like, well, I agree. So how am I supposed to boo? How am I supposed to boo? She did a promo last night talking about the 10-man tag and how people say they want new things and new wrestlers, but the fans did something opposite of that during the 10-man women's tag. And so you're like, well, she's supposed to be the heel, but I'm agreeing with everything she says. And every time she's feuding with an opponent, her stuff it makes sense. And it's like, it's hard to boo this person when everything she does you love, and every time she talks you agree.
Yeah, she's just way miscast. I mean, she's doing a fine job, but it's just not the role for her. I think she's a natural babyface. They've got so few effective babyfaces. I don't know why they would go against the tide here. And yeah, fans just aren't buying it. But nevertheless, they had a great match. We go into the Survivor Series 10-man elimination. For years now, this has been the real problem of the Survivor Series, right? There were some years where they just abandoned it altogether, I think realizing that it was almost this kind of albatross. The team concept just doesn't work as well as it did 30 years ago when there was more of a novelty to it. But they still feel obliged to put on a few of these matches every year. Personally, I like them. They're kind of nostalgic. But I think there's a right way to book them. And it's kind of a catch-22 that this was a criticism of these matches, way back when, was that because you wanted to get the matches in a reasonable amount of time, very often you'd have these rapid-fire eliminations that were not believable. So wrestlers getting pinned 10, 20 seconds into a match, just rapid fire, and then you'd have an 8 or 10 man elimination match that was over in 6 minutes. The flip side of that is, realistically, booking a match with, as many as 9 eliminations takes forever, right?
Yeah, that sounds insane.
And that's what happened. I mean, you had 2 matches that just went way too long. I mean, I think they were each about a half hour long. And I think, especially with the men's match, there was a lot of good stuff in it. So it wasn't a bad match, but it's just a big investment from fans early in the card in what is essentially a mid-card match with, and the nature of these team matches, there's not a lot of storyline. There's not a lot of, rivalries or personal issues. And nobody for years now has bought into this, brand warfare thing. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
And they just keep on, kind of shoving it down the fans' mouth. And to me, even though this was a decent match, it was the beginning of the end, because it really brought fans down, and they never came back.
Yeah, these matches, I have a couple thoughts on the Survivor Series 10-man thing, because I used to love the original concept. The whole show is a bunch of different teams. And I think if they kind of went back to that concept and went over the top with it, it could work. But what they're doing here with the brand supremacy thing and no stakes, and they just had a draft, so some of these guys were just on that team. You don't even
identify some of these guys as Raw guys or SmackDown guys. It was hard for me sometimes to keep track of which team was which, because when these guys just came over.
Like Seth Rollins was just on Team SmackDown, so it's like, wait, is he on Team SmackDown? No, he's wrong. I'm confused. Like, there's so much confusion along with it. And like you said, there's no stories between this. So it's just like, here's a bunch of guys fighting for nothing just because we want to get a bunch of guys in this match that started this pay-per-view and stuff. And yeah, so nothing behind it. And I see why it was the beginning of the end, because it just reminded people that there's nothing happening here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that's even more case with the women's match that we'll get to. But yeah, you're right. I mean, one other way to kind of get through these quicker is, on both the men's and women's match, they got down to a sole survivor. And maybe for the sake of storytelling, that's the story they want to tell or whatever. But one obvious way to shorten these matches is to have one team survive mostly. So you only have to have 5 eliminations instead of 9. The other thing to do, and I don't know why they don't do this, is make the teams 4-man teams instead of 5-man teams. They were for years. Back in the early to mid 90s, they were usually 4-man teams. That's 2 less people to be eliminated. So that's 2 obvious things. One other thing that I it's been a long time since I went to Survivor Series. I think I went back in 2012, and I don't even remember if they had any elimination matches back then. But being in the building for a 10-man tag team match, you can't see anything in the ring.
Right.
They're all lined up along the side of the ring. It forces you to watch the screen because you can't see the action.
Wow. Yeah, this is just they just have to retire it at this point. It's not doing anybody any good. The Soul Survivor thing is just silly. If that's what they're trying to do, just figure out a different way to do this, because don't. If the live crowd is having problems with this, we have to figure out a different thing to do here.
Or the other thing to do, and I think NXT has done an okay job with this over the last few years, building up to War Games, is you plan in advance far enough that you can organically create a 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 rivalry, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just putting a team together; it is a match with stakes. And you think about the factions that could have been at play here, whether it was the Hurt Business or a couple of tag teams, something like that. You could have more organically created a rivalry between 2 groups instead of and
like you could have had the Bloodline and the New Day,
right? Yeah, yeah.
They could have built to something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that would have been a viable main event. Yeah, 3-on-3 Survivor Series elimination style rules. That could absolutely work. Yeah. But I mean, I'm okay with the brand versus brand stuff with the champions. I think sometimes that works pretty well, even though there's not really stakes and there's not. And I think you touched on this, and this is especially the case this year. This was not a pay-per-view that was promoted very well at all, and it almost seemed like their heart wasn't into it,
Right. It did seem like that. It seemed like, oh, we have this show coming up.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be a big one. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah. But I mean, the matches weren't even announced until pretty much the last minute. It felt like they are trapped in this format of brand versus brand. They not even really into it. It gets in the way of their storytelling, because the very next night you have to abandon all that stuff because everybody goes back to their brand. So it's kind of a mess. One thing I've thought, I mean, if you want to put like a stamp on the Survivor Series and make it feel special, I thought that the fact that it is the second oldest pay-per-view, I think it's 36 years old now or something like that. I thought it would be a good place to do nostalgia, right? So, they used to do those old school Raw or whatever it was. But why not make Survivor Series the one time of the year where you bring back legends? You can even have a Legends Survivor Series elimination match, where nobody's got to do very much because you can eliminate guys pretty quickly. You have the red, white, and blue ropes, the old ring, all that stuff. That could be a fun thing. The other thing I've heard thrown out there is put stakes on this brand versus brand.
There has to be stakes. That's the only way people are going to believe in it, if there's stakes.
The one thing I heard, and maybe it was the guys at the Observer brought this up, I forget, but they talked about making it so like the brand that wins gets the 30th spot at the Royal Rumble or something like that.
Xavier Woods did a promo where he was outside on roller skates and he was trying to make stakes for this. He said something along those lines of the winners get the last 5 spots of the Royal Rumbles and the loser gets the first 5 spots. And I was like, well, that sounds like a great idea, but they didn't bite that for 1 second. They didn't. I don't even know if they showed the promo on TV. They just no stakes. If there's no stakes, fans are just not going to care. That's just how it is. No matter what, if stakes aren't there, they aren't there. And this showed very strongly here at Survivor Series that they knew this show was just a show. And it started to become more apparent as the show went along and the fans went along with it,
Yeah, it's a real problem because this is supposed to be one of, the so-called Big Four or even Big Three. pay-per-views, but and this is now every year, they have a harder time getting people interested in Survivor Series than they do even like, one of your off-month pay-per-views,
Right.
where they're not bound by these rules, both of the elimination matches and now brand versus brand. They kind of have to stop all their storylines in their tracks to put on the show. That said, well, we'll get back to it, but I think they in some places they did a fine job. I think the Big E Roman build up in the last few weeks was pretty good.
Yes, I agree.
But before that, I want to touch on. Well, I mean, not to make this a match by match review, but the Battle Royal was just awful, just garbage. Further brought down the show.
The battle royals, their battle royals are always the same. We have this big guy and we need him to eliminate a bunch of people. They do it with the Andre the Giant battle royal. They do it with the best Royal Rumble ever. It's just like a showcase for the giant guy, and it's all the same. It's always so boring, and it was the same thing here. It's like, oh, we need to get almost over. Let's have him throw a bunch of people out. But it's like, dude, nobody cares about any of this. No one cares.
Yeah, I mean, I thought one thing that was interesting in this match and also the men's elimination match is that the New York fans got behind some guys that I think would have been a surprise to WWE. Jeff Hardy in the men's elimination match, the people were crazy for Jeff Hardy from the moment he came out. A guy who has very much settled into like a lower mid-card role in WWE. You see that fans, at least the fans there in Brooklyn, still very much saw him as like a top guy. And in the Battle Royal, to something of a lesser extent, I thought Ricochet got a great reaction coming in, and him being, I think, the last guy, I wondered, what if he won this thing? You would get a nice pop from these fans, but of course that was not to be.
No, that's not what they have in their cards. Those two are very interesting because a lot of people have been, because I've been like, who is Roman have here on SmackDown, like going into Royal Rumble, going into WrestleMania, like he's beaten everybody, and a lot of people have brought up Jeff Hardy's name. So it was super interesting to see that reception, and it's going to be super interesting to see what WWE does, because he's been building a little bit of I don't know what it is, but online, like people really like Jeff Hardy, and he's in the crowds. It's still the same. He got his old entrance back, and people still love Jeff Hardy, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him.
Yeah, I think you could absolutely get a pay-per-view main event out of those two. You build up kind of the Rocky story of the aging former main eventer who still has some gas in the tank. He'd absolutely have the fans behind him. So they've got a while now. I think their next pay-per-view isn't until January now, right? I mean, that the New Year's weekend pay-per-view. So they've got some time. The women's elimination match, I think was the low point of the night, and this is really something, maybe more than anything else, that to me kind of encapsulated the night and encapsulated where WWE is at. You had 10 women who represent most of the women's division, or a good chunk of it at least, and it was apparent that outside of Bianca and Sasha, none of these women are over.
Right.
And I don't want to be too harsh. I mean, some are maybe a little more over than other, but by and large, these were 8 out of 10 women that fans were not interested in, did not care about, were not rooting for. And, they worked really hard. There was some good action in this match. And the fans were completely dead, doing the wave, chanting for CM Punk. And it was, again, and then Sasha and Bianca got in the ring, and the wave stopped, and that's worth pointing out, because it was right in like mid-wave where all the fans are getting into it, that they both tagged in, they go face to face, and everybody stops what they're doing. And it shows you the difference when you've got characters in the ring that fans care about. And but unfortunately that was relatively short-lived too, and this match just never clicked, and just wasn't very good.
Right. It's on WWE at this point. Anytime that they are upset at fans, you condition the fans to do these things. You condition this. And it's apparent when we know that the match is only for Bianca, for them to put over Bianca, for her to be the sole survivor. So why would any of your fans care about any of these other wrestlers when they know what that's there to do? And that's the same thing with Sasha. They know, like, okay, these two are the people. It's just the showcase for them. We're going to stop when it's up for them, because WWE conditioned them to only care about stars, only care about Roman. He's the guy. Don't care about anybody he's wrestling. Only care about him and what he's doing. SmackDown is about Roman. The women's division is only about Becky, Sasha, Charlotte, and Bianca now, Bayley when she comes back. You only care about these women. The rest of them are just side supporting characters, and the fans show that, and then the WWE gets mad when the fans show that. Well, you're telling us to only care about these people and not care about the rest, and it's showing here, so it's on you at this point.
Yeah, and the problem is that those stars can only wrestle each other so much, right?
Exactly.
You've got to like cycle some of these other people in and out of those spots. It looks like, you know, they're building for Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch, and I don't know what the reception is going to be to that, because and Liv's been doing a fine job, and she actually had a little more support than I would have expected from those fans. But like you said, I mean, I don't know that fans have been conditioned to think anything about her, or take her seriously as a challenger. Then we had the main event, and again, I think the crowd was at its absolute low point at the beginning of this match. They even seemed kind of dead for the entrances. It's now, you know, 11 o'clock almost, and fans have been in their seats now for 4+ hours. That said, a real testament to what professional those two are. They brought the fans back with a really strong match, and you know, a few minutes into this, fans were way into the near falls and the big moves. I thought they had a really good match. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on was, I know you talked to a minor spoiler for our next issue. You've got an interview coming up with a Big E. This was in some ways kind of his like arrival, his kind of coming out party, his first time headlining a major WWE pay-per-view as world champion in that main event spot. We know Roman's a star. What did you think of the job Big E did in this spot?
I think he did about as perfect as you can be in this spot. You're in there with the top star. This is the main event. Your back is up against the wall, essentially. The crowd is on something. They've been in there a long time. I've been at these shows. I was at that 8-hour WrestleMania in New York with Becky.
Me too. Oh,
so,
that was
you know
brutal.
what I mean? By the main event, we're like, just get me out of here, dude.
Yep.
I want the match to be 4 minutes so we can leave. But you know, when you're good at what you do, eventually the crowd's going to come back, and that's exactly what was shown here. Roman's a professional. Big E is taking on this role head on. He had some great matches with Bobby Lashley. He's just been taking on this main event role. The crowd is behind him, and they had a great match. I really loved what they did here. Hard hitting. All of Roman's matches are very intense, and E was intense here. It wasn't any of the criticisms people like to make about he needs to get serious. He was serious. He was in there. He was walking around like a star, and you know, they made it happen. I thought it was a really great match.
Yeah, I think the spot in the match, kind of the turning point where fans really got into it, was when Roman was hitting him with the Superman punches, and he was essentially hulking up. And the fans got way into it, and it's something that you haven't seen from his other opponents. And I think it's something they really need to get across, is that not exaggerating, not making superhuman, but really drilling down on the fact that this guy is powerful. You know, this is not just another opponent. This guy is a beast in terms of strength and size, and the fans really got into it. I'm not going to quibble with the finish. I mean, Roman Reigns is the priority. They've been protecting him for a long time. But that's what I want to ask you. That said, right, I understand why they did it. I if I had to make the call, I think I'd make the same call. That said, the fans were really into Big E, and I wondered, what if, right? And if you were ever going to do it, You could have had Roman lose here. He doesn't lose his title.
This was it. Al.
Is that the
this
call you would
was
make?
the moment. I would have made the call for Roman to take the L here because he's invincible. He's been invincible,
It hurt
and
him.
it wouldn't have hurt him at all. He would have had
really would have helped Big E get.
It would have
him
helped
over here.
Big E so much, and it would have Roman something to talk about. Like, oh, that was a fluke. It wasn't for the championship. He's on another show. Like, whatever. It doesn't even matter. But it's just going to be like, Roman did it again. Who's going to beat Roman now? We know what you guys are leading to. We know that you want Brock Lesnar here. I thought it was pretty much with the Rock chatter. I didn't think Roman was losing anyways because I'm like, if there's any chance that the Rock is going to be there, there's no way that Roman is losing this match because they're going to set up the next match. But the Rock isn't here either. Come on, dude. Like, boom, you set this up. You got a match with E in the future. Like, everything would have worked out. But I mean, I understand Roman's the guy. This show is all about Roman. This is the Roman show. So I'm not surprised by the result. And also don't think it, I don't want to say it hurt E because I don't think it did. I think the crowd, like you said, they saw that like, oh, this guy's on another level. He's taking Roman stuff. They're into it. And, when he eventually does beat Roman, which I think he will, it's going to go over, I think. I think so.
Yeah. I wonder about that. He cut the promo last night on Raw where, no excuses. He essentially said Roman was the better man that night. But
if this is leading to Roman and Brock Lesnar, Al, I just can't, man. How many, we're going to do this again?
Yeah.
That's what we're going here?
No, I'm with you. I mean, the prospect of that being the main event of WrestleMania. Look, I mean, I always say WWE does their best storytelling leading up to WrestleMania. So I don't doubt that they're going to get fans excited about the prospect of seeing that match, if that is the match. And it does look like that's kind of where they're going. But that will be how many times they've done that match at WrestleMania?
So many times. I've watched like 3 of them, it feels.
Yeah, and it's just an indictment of another year passes, and you still haven't created a star worthy of that spot that you go back to Roman Reigns. And Big E's talked about how he thought with the right handling of this match that this match could have been a match that could have headlined WrestleMania, and they could have made fans want to see it. I don't know if it's there. Could they have gotten it there? Maybe. I do think that they're onto something with Big E. I think he's got charisma. He just checks a lot of the boxes. I do wonder, not to make too much of it. I mean, it's just one loss. But I think they told the story at the end of the night that clearly you've got Big E on this level and you've got Roman on this level.
That's where I ended up at. It's like, this is Roman's show. Don't forget. Hogan must pose. Do not forget.
Yeah,
Roman must Roman. Man, it's apparent. It's apparent. I talked about this before. They get behind the one guy and they just go. They got behind Cena. They got behind Hogan. They got behind Austin. You know what I mean? Like, they have their one guy, and you need to know that this show is about that guy.
Yeah. What do you see as the upside to or the ceiling for Big E? I mean, can he also be that guy? Can he be 1A kind of thing? Or as some people have said, has he just been defined down for too long as 1/3 of a comedy act, and that makes him hard to be taken seriously as the guy in WWE?
No, I feel totally the opposite of that, because what Big E has done as the WWE champion out of the ring has been insane. He's done so much for, I'm a black wrestling fan, and what Big E as the black world champion has done for the culture is more than any WWE champion ever, even more than Kofi. So to me, he's already done it. And I think if they kind of take and focus on what he's doing out of the ring to bring different fans and different voices and different viewers to their product based off what he has done, they will see that Big E is the one and can be the top guy. he's done way more than Roman's done out of the ring. Like he's at boxing fights, he's at music concerts, he's at football, college football events. He's everywhere. He's doing the thing that a WWE champion does. And Roman has been doing it for Survivor Series, but like, you know, when he's not promoting a big WWE show, he's not out there just talking about random things. And Big E has been out there since he's won the championship on every outlet that I know, as not even a wrestling fan, as like a hip hop music fan, or, you know, a fan of other things, of a sports fan. Like, he is out there doing it. I think he's shown that he can be that guy. And I hope that they eventually see it. I don't know what's going to happen here at Royal Rumble. I don't know what they have planned for WrestleMania on that side. So I'm nervous.
I know. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about different matches, opponents. Clearly, you know, something going on with Seth Rollins. That's what's next for him, and that's fine. I know he's talked about Goldberg. I mean, when he talks about his dream match, he has said that that's the one that he's pushing for. I don't know if that would be WrestleMania. I know he was a Goldberg fan as a kid. Right. Have you got any interest in that?
I mean, since he's so adamant about it and he's talked about it a lot, and I talked about it with him in the interview, he's still interested in doing it. Just for that, I think, yeah. And Al, they have to sell out 100,000 seat arena two times in a row. They're trying to do it. They're trying to do it 2 nights in a row.
Yeah. I mean,
what are they going to do? What are they going to do? 2 nights in a row? That sounds crazy.
I just don't think they have it. I mean,
they can't.
No, I mean, I think about all those years they were running SummerSlam at the Barclays Center here in Brooklyn. That show would sell out so quickly. I don't think Survivor Series ever sold out. And right up until the day of the show, you could get tickets on the secondary market for $30. The interest just isn't there right now. And I don't see how. You know, once upon a time, I'd say just the WrestleMania brand would be enough to sell 100,000 seats, and maybe it still is for one night. But I don't think it is. I mean, I think you're going to have, I don't know, what's the realistic, 35, 40,000 a night, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. You know. Maybe you're getting 40,000. And like, what match is going to bring even that out? What we have now, you know?
Right. You get The Rock in there and you got it, right? I mean,
exactly.
The place. Short of that, I don't know. I just don't see it with the roster that they have. Let's switch over briefly and talk about AEW. A couple weeks ago, they had their big Full Gear show and the culmination of a very long storyline for them. We won't go through the whole card, but we should definitely talk about the new AEW World Champion, Hangman Adam Page. Again, a storyline that really kind of traces back to the roots of AEW. With Kenny Omega, and now this is kind of the passing of the guard, especially with Kenny now taking some time off, and maybe a lot of time off. I mean, word is that he's vacating his AAA title. He's having, I think, more than one surgery, and he's talked even to us at PWI about feeling banged up for a long time. So again, kind of handing over the reins to Adam Page. And I got to say, I mean, I think it's a little bit risky. I mean, I know that there are fans who love Hangman Page, and I get it. I mean, I think he's an exciting, charismatic wrestler. But I don't think a lot of fans see him as I think the hardcore AEW fans do, the ones that were fans of the Elite before AEW even started and are watching BTE every week on YouTube. But for the casual fan who's just kind of discovering AEW, who was brought in by names like Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley, and certainly CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, I think they see Adam Page and they might be like, really? Him?
Right.
He's the top guy. But that said, I'm not saying it's not a gamble worth taking, because again, I see what they see in the guy. I think he's got a huge upside. What do you think about them making that move and him now being the top guy, the standard bearer for AEW?
I had some thoughts online, and people came for me. I said, "What if Adam Page? What if Adam Page lost this match against Kenny Omega?" And people didn't. People were not happy about it. But it's like AEW has been so great with just completing these stories and sending and giving people exactly what they want, that I kind of sometimes talked about WWE conditioning. I have the brain of sometimes like, what if he didn't tonight? What if he just what if he didn't give the people what they want and just like sent people home upset? And Tony Khan just won't do that. And but I think it paid off here. It was a great payoff. A lot of people enjoyed the story. They enjoyed the payoff. They knew what was coming, and it was great for them. But to me, Bryan Danielson exists in your wrestling company. So like anything, I can't even think about anything else in the world. I would have had Bryan Danielson beat Adam Page on Dynamite the 4 days after the show, because you have Bryan Danielson here. Just like Bryan Danielson says in all his promos now, I'm the best wrestler here. And I'm going to show all you, and eventually I'm going to be AEW World Champion. That's how I think. And then when I see him wrestle, I'm like, yeah, here it is. It's going to be hard for me to get behind Hangman's reign, because looming in the back is the greatest wrestler of our generation, Bryan Danielson. I think they're moving towards the match, but people are kind of like, oh, so that's going to be a great victory for Hangman, beating Kenny Omega, then beating Bryan Danielson. Wait, hold on a second here. Who says he's beating Bryan Danielson? Why are we moving on here? I have a thing with long reigns. To me, I get frustrated with long reigns, Al. I'm going to keep it real with you. I'm not really a big fan of long reigns in this day and age. I think I'd like to look to like UFC or even like any sports in general. You don't really see, like, sometimes you see a guy win the championship and then the next fight he loses it.
Sure.
And then the next fight another guy wins. You know what I mean? And it's not always just one dominant world champion. I mean, we've seen that for so many years. I get so hung up on these old wrestling tropes and I hate them. It's just like, well, for centuries, a guy is world champion for 2 years, for 3 years, and it gets old after a while. So is Hangman Adam Page going to be AEW champion for 2 years? I don't want to see that. I don't have any interest in that.
Yeah, I think it's a real interesting discussion. For one, I agree. I mean, I see Adam Page, and knowing, like you said, that Bryan Danielson is waiting in the wings, CM Punk to some extent, and a number of others. You see guys,
even,
Sure, yeah, absolutely. You see other guys who are primed for that position, and it feels, because of that, it does feel like maybe Page is in that transitional champion kind of spot. But as I said, this was like a story that was like 2 years in the making,
right?
And you don't get the sense that they're going to blow through it that quickly.
There was a couple of timing issues too, because like I think this would have hit a little bit different if they had done it at All Out. If Adam Page hadn't, had a baby and kind of was out for a while, if they had done this like right before Bryan Danielson or right the same day that Bryan Danielson came in, maybe like things could have changed. But like the timing on it just seems a little bit late to me.
But it does feel like Page is their project, and they seem determined to get him over on that top level with an Omega and a Danielson and a Punk and a Jericho and a Moxley as a top guy. Again, I think the faithful, the hardcores accept it. I think they got to do a little bit of work to win over some of the more casuals. Right. And in some ways, it's a good problem to have, that you've got like this wealth of star power that there's a long line of challengers who are believable as champion. The other thing to take into consideration, though, is that, look now at the history of that title. You had Jericho, known as a WWE guy, right?
Yep.
He loses it to Moxley, a WWE guy. And then you get the long Omega reign and now Page. So do you think there'd be some backlash if they then went and they put it on Danielson or Punk? I mean, again, these guys that a lot of fans still see as ex-WWE guys.
Yeah, see, I don't see them as ex WWE guys, even though they are, but to me, they're not. So I don't.
Yeah.
It's a hard line to walk. I understand when people say that, but it's like Bryan Danielson isn't a WWE guy, man. What are you talking about? He wrestled in WWE, but he's not a WWE guy. But I would totally understand that because they are going towards. They talk about the 4 pillars in AEW thing, like they're trying to build. They're establishing that they're trying to build a different foundation for this company. So it's
but you know what, you talk about
it's Bryan Danielson.
Yeah. and it's interesting you bring up the 4 pillars, because I think in some ways that those guys, and you're talking about Guevara, MJF, Jungle Boy, and Darby Allin, right? I think you could argue that all those guys are more over than Page is.
I would agree that MJF it. Yeah,
not that they are world title ready. A part of it is just exposure and Page taking that prolonged break. He's just kind of been, out of sight, out of mind for a while. Yeah.
Else. Yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's gonna be very interesting to see what they do at him as champion now. Are they gonna have him in a bunch of like tags with the Dark Order? Are they going to have him like what's going to happen here? I'm interested to see.
Yeah, I've never loved the Dark Order stuff with Page, kind of like him as his own man. So we'll see. All this said, I mean, this is kind of nitpicky stuff. Kudos to AEW for taking a guy who they identified, and a relatively young guy who was unknown, who they identified as having a big upside, and going all in with him. It's sort of what we criticized WWE for not doing so often.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a good sign for the future that like you don't have to be a quote unquote WWE guy to be the top guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up, I did want to go back to WWE for one small point, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. But one of the big stories coming out of Raw last night, the follow-up to Survivor Series, is this fan attack on Seth Rollins. I actually heard about it from my mom, my 78-year-old mom, who heard about it on the news. So
my goodness,
it's fascinating. It's a story. I mean, I think for again, non-fans, they're more kind of stunned by this than wrestling fans, for whom, for better or for worse, this has kind of become part of being a fan. It's been a little while since we see these, but there's a one so often. Well, it's funny because one of these in 2021 is different than even 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
It does feel different this year. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is I think, the rule, unwritten rule, or maybe it was a written rule, was you go into the ring, you put your hands on a wrestler, it's every man for himself, and get ready to get pummeled. And it just feels like, I don't know if that works in 2021 anymore.
That's right. I never really thought about that, Al, because like now it's like they're going to take this footage to court, or, like it's different. It used to be like, we used to see guys get beat up on Raw and Nitro, and it's just like, that's it for this. You know what I mean? Like, it's different. It's so
the other thing
now.
I wonder about with something like this that I do think also is maybe a reflection of changing times is, when I saw that, I wondered, well, does this guy maybe have mental issues?
Right. Exactly. The lines are so great. It's a whole different ball game than what it used to be. It used to be like, we would cheer on if a guy get in the ring. The referee would
some
stomp
people
him
still
out,
do.
the wrestler, like he would get pummeled. And now it's like, does he have mental issues? How did he get here? What's happening here? Like, there's so many different avenues for this. It's not the same, and so it feels like that now. I've been looking at discourse all day on it, and it's just like, just don't do it as a wrestling fan. I know, like the discourse is like, the people that are gonna do this aren't really like listening to this podcast, or you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, it's a hard line, but for the people in, the right state of mind, I don't even want to say that. I feel like that's even, so I'm like, just don't.
They used to just be dismissed as, marks, right? But now, again, in 2021, you got to think something's not right with this guy, right?
Right.
And that kind of creates a whole other dimension to it. And it's not to say, take it easy on him or don't prosecute him. You absolutely should prosecute him, if only to send that message that you can't do this.
Right.
But in a way, maybe it worked out as best as it could in that it was security that got him out of there. And, I think of the situation a few years ago, also in the Barclays, coincidentally, with Bret Hart at the Hall of Fame, where the fan attacked him. And there you had wrestlers all over
yeah.
And, they did go old school with that guy.
FTR heated him up for reals.
Yeah. And again, I don't know that flies as much as well as it used to.
That was just like 2 years ago, maybe a little bit over 2 years ago.
I do wonder whether, and I don't know what difference this makes, but whether this makes the case for some kind of disclaimer, some kind of announcement at shows. And it feels almost silly to have to do it. But for one thing, to make it clear, fans are not allowed to come over.
There's not a disclaimer about
There's
this,
not.
Al.
Yeah,
there's not.
nothing.
I've been to a million wrestling shows, a million WWE shows, and there's not a disclaimer that says don't come in here.
Or beyond that, again, as stupid as this sounds, do they need to have a disclaimer at the beginning of the show essentially saying what you're about to see is not real?
Right. Something along those lines of like, these people are playing characters, like, don't try to fight them. There's not that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I wonder, even if just sort of like liability, whether that's.
I mean, they used to have
future.
like the don't try this at home thing, but that's not saying like don't try to come into the ring while the show's happening.
Yeah, it's always kind of ugly and unfortunate when you see something like that, and hopefully we won't see it again anytime soon.
Right.
Yeah. All right, Reg, thank you so much. Really great having you on. I appreciate it. We'll do it again soon.
For sure. Thanks, Al. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Righteous Reg once again for joining me on the podcast. You could catch his work in every issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, including the upcoming February issue, where he's got a big hot seat interview with the WWE champion, Big E. Right now, let's go to another interview. This one conducted by our very own Candace Cordelia, and it is also with a champion, 1/3 of the Ring of Honor 6-man tag team champions, and the head of Shane Taylor Promotions. It is Shane Taylor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Face Turn with Candace Cordelia, with your host, me, myself, and I, Candace Cordelia. Today's episode is featuring Ring of Honor's Shane Taylor. You'll probably have seen him in a massive amount of amazing matches, especially for Ring of Honor. And today we're going to talk about the promotion, but definitely talk about Shane Taylor's beginnings in wrestling, as well as the state of Ring of Honor and so much more to get into. First and foremost, thank you, Shane, for being a part of this show. It's an honor to meet you and a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a great introduction. Usually, I get on people because, I should have heard somewhere CEO Shane Taylor Promotions, former Ring of Honor World Television Champion, current reigning Ring of Honor 6-man tag team, all the accolades that come with your boy. But it's okay. It's okay. How are you?
I'm good. And I'm glad you mentioned all of that, because I could have gone on and on and on with all of your accolades. But it's better to hear it first and foremost from the talent themselves. That's just my opinion. And we'll get into everything that you've accomplished and also everything that's happening currently. But I want to go into just a little bit of background. A lot of your fans are, of course, very familiar with Shane Taylor's background growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, and your journey to Ring of Honor itself. But just to preface for anyone that is unfamiliar, do you care to talk about just growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, how that was for you and how you actually got your start in the wrestling business?
Of course. As with most kids that grow up in the inner city, there was a lot of violence, a lot of drugs around, a lot of crime around, things like that. For example, me and my brothers, we weren't allowed to sit on the couches in our home because my dad and my uncles would fight the drug dealers on the corner. They didn't like that. So they would come around our house probably about weekly or so and shoot up the house. When my dad went to work, that was his sort of like, all right, well, if you guys stay upstairs or you stay on the floor, I hopefully won't get a call saying somebody was hit. You know what I mean? So, growing up like that, you have to grow up quick. You have to grow up and be aware. My moral compass right, is a little different than most people's. Most people would say, who've never lived in those environments, well, I would never do this. Well, I would never do that. I go, oh, okay. What about in this scenario? Well, I mean, exactly. Do what you have to do to make sure you and your family survive. It's very easy to cast stones and talk about, what people should and shouldn't do when you're not living in that survivalist mentality. But all of that seemed normal to me growing up, right? You don't really have any perspective that's not that. Everybody is living like that. Everybody deals with stuff like that. So that seemed normal. It wasn't until I went to college, just telling stories to friends, and the looks on their faces were like, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "Y'all didn't deal with that?" And they're like, "No, we didn't." Nothing like that ever, So that was a bit of a shock there, just to see, that this wasn't happening everywhere. Not everybody had to grow up with that and deal with that. But it made me a stronger person. It prepared me for the real world. Nowadays, there's a lot of people. I feel as though they protect kids from too much. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, they're going to have to be able to deal with the real world, deal with loss, deal with confrontation, deal with people not, accepting them, not, liking them. Those are things that you're going to have to deal with. And growing up in Cleveland prepared me for that. Then once I left college, was All-American, played football, wrestled in college, the whole nine. Had to make some choices, and it was either try to pursue amateur wrestling full time and try to be like an Olympian and do that, or, try my hand at, long snapping and try to go to the NFL. But neither one of those really was I passionate about, but pro wrestling was something that I've loved my entire life, was a bonding experience for myself and my family. So once I left college, I found out what the independents were. And it was an independent show in Pittsburgh where I was living at the time. The International Wrestling Cartel has had absolutely a who's who list on their roster since their inception. And I ran into some guys by the name of Ray Monroe and Jerry Myers, a.k.a. J Rock, Give It Up One Time, and Ray Rowe, who is currently Eric of Viking Raider fame. So got talking with them. They decided that I was talented enough and smart enough and coachable enough to, for them to help. And here we are 14 crazy years later.
And it's all very fascinating. One of the things that really struck out to me as you were stating your story was, growing up in Cleveland. And it sounds as though that experience in a twist of fate prepared you for pro wrestling, I would assume, just being able to be on your feet and deal with adversity. When you got into the pro wrestling scheme of things and were starting to train, was there anything that stuck out to you where you thought, wow, this perhaps is much more difficult than I anticipated? Or did you ever have any doubts when you were starting your training about forging a career in pro wrestling?
Not so much from a skill perspective. A lot of the amateur wrestling kind of goes hand in hand with the movement and trying to anticipate movement and things like that, being prepared for anything at any time. A lot of what was hard for me to wrap my mind around was the business side of it, the political side of it, the ego side of it, right? Because I come from sports, from a sports background where my hard work and my skill determines how successful I am, not someone else's opinion of me. You see what I'm saying? And that was something that really, took a while to understand, because here I am thinking, all right, well, if I'm going out, having better matches than this person, the crowd is reacting more than this person, I'm doing this. I'm doing all the things that I've been told are supposed to be what helps you be successful. Why is this not happening? You know what I mean? And, you understand, okay, well, there's favoritism, there's this, there's that, and again, I had a mindset like football, right? Like if I run a 4.240 and you run a 4.5, chances are I'm going to be the starting receiver. You know what I mean? Not, well, okay, I'm going to have to run a 4.6 to make your 4.5 look faster. You know what I mean? Like my mind just couldn't wrap itself around that, but being in this game for as long as I have, I understand what it is now. I understand the things that I have to do, the battles that I can fight, the battles that I shouldn't fight, ones that, will help, ones that will hinder. So it really did get me ready for the crazy world of pro wrestling, because just like that, you're going to have to know when a situation is going bad, when you need to leave, when you need to move around, when you need to, maybe even call for help, you know what I mean? Just to make sure that you're safe, the people around you are safe, and everybody's taken care of.
When did it click for you, the business side of things? Was there a certain moment where you thought, okay, now I get it, now I know how to navigate it? Or do you think that even now in 2021 going forward, it's still something that even when you think you have it figured out, it just kind of, something happens that's out of your control and you're thinking, oh, I have to re-navigate what I think about the business side of wrestling?
A little bit of both, because the sport is ever evolving. So I feel like everybody's always tinkering and trying to, to learn more. But at this point, I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on it. And it's kind of just continuing to study up and continuing to see trends and figuring out how to be as creative as possible to capitalize on things at the right time. But yeah, it's there are going to be unexpected things, clearly. In the last week or so, it's been a crazy amount of uncertainty, a crazy amount of news. But there's also with the shock, with the loss, with the tragedies, with the things that happen. There's also excitement. There's also an intensity. A lot of expectation and hope as well for so many cool things to happen. So it's definitely an exciting and ever changing sort of time right now.
And I like the fact that you said exciting, even as we'll get right into it. I mean, Ring of Honor, the news recently, the promotion going on hiatus and everyone involved being let go on a temporary basis. But just judging from the headlines and everyone talking, no one knows what's going to happen next week, much less at the end of this year going into 2022. So with everything that you've achieved at Ring of Honor leading up to this point, what are your thoughts? I mean, where do you foresee the company going in your personal opinion?
I mean, that's the $1 million question. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. I hope that the changes that they need to make, that have been suggested, that have been told, that have been said damn near ad nauseum for years, I hope those changes are made. It's going to be very hard to expect more success or a different result if a lot of those changes aren't made. But those are going to be decisions that are handled by those at the top, and we'll see what happens. I think that a lot of the professional wrestling world has been in sort of this safe bubble because of ROH. And there's a lot of people who maybe have forgotten just how talented our roster really is. Because I would put our top 20 against anybody's, in the shows that we put on have been consistently better. And I think once you start seeing more of these Ring of Honor talents out into the independents and in other companies, you're going to see real quick that the level of difficulty, the challenge, the level of talent has gone up tremendously, and a lot of people are going to have to start playing catch up because we've been sort of sharpening each other this whole time. So I'm very excited to see what a lot of my peers are getting ready to do in this sport.
Yes. And I mean, what are you getting ready to do with Shane Taylor Promotions? You and your group of compadres, you're very popular within, not just within the Ring of Honor universe, but wrestling in general. Your fans love seeing you in the ring and seeing what Shane Taylor Promotions has come into. So what happens with you all? What happens next?
There's a lot of potential options on the table. We've had a few calls. I'm about to make some more calls today. You know what I mean? It's very hard to move 5 people at once, but there's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of places that need ready-made talent that can step into a main event role, especially African-American talent. There's a lot of places that are nervous about who it is that we are and what we stand for and the message that we send out. And then again, there are a lot of people who like to take risks and can see just how much something like ASTP is needed in the sport right now, and are ready to take those chances and really have some fun. So there's just so much out. There's so much opportunity out there, and it's just a matter of finding the right fit and being able to make it work.
Yes. And I have to note that you all are the current 6-man tag team champs at Ring of Honor. So regardless of what happens, you'll have that feather in your caps, which is a huge accomplishment. And you mentioned African-American talent. And one of the questions I definitely want to touch upon is just the legacy that you have in this industry, being an African-American man. But also we're seeing a revolution, it seems, in wrestling. You know, we have hashtags like Black Wrestling Draws. We're seeing more African-American talent just across the board. Talk to us about what it means, first and foremost, to be an African-American man in this industry and the journey that you've had, upholding the legacy that you have so far.
It's a blessing, and I'm not going to say curse. There's a blessing and an obligation that comes with it. Because whether you like it or not, you don't only represent yourself when you go out there. That's not a luxury that we're afforded. A lot of our counterparts can do that, and that's great for them. But when it comes to us, everything you do is a reflection upon the culture. It's a reflection upon the fans. And that's why it's so important for me to be able to be one of those voices that says, I'm not going to be a stereotype. I'm not going to be a caricature of Black culture. I'm not going to lessen myself or deem myself less threatening because you're too lazy to understand what my culture is. I'm not going to lessen myself to make you feel better. I'm not going to lessen myself to put your fears at ease. If you're afraid of me, but not the next man, that's something on you, not me. I want our talent, to be able to be as creative as we want to be and not be stuck in the 5 or 6 characters that they have for Black people. I want us to be able to have, and our fans to be able to have access to merchandise for as many of our stars as possible. Those are conversations that I get into on social media all the time. People go, oh, well, you've been asking for this. It better sell out because you've been asking for it. I go, I don't care if I sell one. The point is that our fans get the option to buy it. That is the point. And they had this guy, they had this guy, they had their one, they had their one. sorry for cussing, but like it gets me so frustrated because it's like, well, we gave them this. That should be good enough. You should be happy. Wrong. That's not how this game works, at least not now. And it should have never been that way. But we have the ability, we have the talent, we have the platforms, we have the voices now to be able to say that doesn't fly anymore. So that's part of, that was part of something that I worked so hard at Ring of Honor for, is to be able to have more minority talent get those merchandising opportunities, to be able to use that platform to talk about social issues, to be able to do things and recognize talent in the sport, especially like, for Black History Month and things like to be able to have and recognize these things and make these changes are something that I feel is a way that I help change the company for the better. And with all of that too, then comes the pressure of being good at your job as well, because representation is one thing, but you have to still be fantastic at your job. You have to be, it's not enough to just be in the spot. You have to go out there and perform and show why you're in that spot. So, for me, for STP, all of my guys understand that. They accept that role. They thrive in that role. And we absolutely love to show up, show out, and prove as many people who support us right, as we do those who, go against us wrong.
Mm. What would you like to see changed in the wrestling business? And I pose this question not just as we're talking about African-American talent in the industry, but just overall, from everything that you've gone through and seen so far in wrestling. What do you think is the most pressing thing that needs to change, in your opinion?
I believe the sport as a whole would be better if not only we had more diversity in ownership of different promotions, but in management as well, in marketing, in talent scouting, in every backstage phase of the game, because the diversity can't just be in the talent. It's got to be throughout the entire industry, because when you have the ability to get different perspectives from marketing, you can understand, okay, not the culture is not the same everywhere. Black, just because you're both Black, if one guy's from Atlanta and one guy's from New York, they're going to be different. How are we going to market that? How are we going to, capitalize on what this individual is bringing us so we can give it to our fans? If you're from Jamaica, that's not the same as being from Haiti or Trinidad. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're from the Bahamas, it's not the same as being from Cali. Like, it's like there's so much depth and history and tradition that people can learn about. And when you have other people backstage who can relate to that talent and bring something special out of them, then it's only going to help the overall product. And that goes with marketing, with promos, with, just creative, different things. When you can tap into the individual and what makes them special, you can draw out something that they didn't even see in themselves. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take the ability of everybody from top to bottom to be able to do that. Because if you don't have that, it's very hard for someone who doesn't know the culture, who doesn't know the details, who doesn't know the history, who's never had the experience, to then tell you how to be you and market you. That's never going to work. So I think that right now is the most pressing thing. We have the talent right now. We have the talent in all age ranges. You've got the veterans, you've got the press, you've got the current stars, you've got stars, the future waiting on deck. This is the time to be able to to make sure that this era is the one that builds a foundation that the next generations after us are only going to build higher and higher.
What would you do if given the opportunity to have your own promotion, right? If that was something that was presented to you, what sort of roles would you take on in terms of if it was agenting, scouting, booking, etc.? What really intrigues you in that realm?
That's a very good question. Obviously, handling the day-to-day, I don't think I'd be a good booker, and especially if I'm going to be wrestling, it's never something that you want to mix. So I would probably have other people do the booking and the scouting. I would handle maybe the creative aspects, promos, things like that. I really love doing stuff like that, is seeing what a character is, seeing what it is in my head, talking with talent about how they see it and coming up with cool ways to bring out that energy in front of a camera. That's something that I really enjoy. And it's something that I take a lot of pride in for myself, right? Promos are probably the best part of my game, and I didn't even get to cut one in ROH for like my first 4 years there. Like, you know what I mean? So It was like, people were like, oh, he's so improved on the mic. It's like, no, I could have been doing this. I just never got the chance. So, but I would probably handle that, as well as being sort of an agent for matches and stuff like that as well. I feel as at this point in the game, I've gained the respect of a lot of talent. And so people would be willing to hear the critiques that I have and apply them, however they like. So I'd probably have that role, as well as like a CEO type role, just to oversee all of the financial stuff. But outside of that, it'd probably be more just creative work.
That's really cool. I love all of those options for you. We'll see what the future holds, right? You never know.
Oh, for sure.
What does your immediate family think about your career, your wife and your 2 children, especially now, having gone through and still going through this pandemic and dealing with quarantine and all of that? What are their thoughts on just the journey that you've had in your career thus far?
I think my oldest is starting to understand it a bit more. My 2-year-old is just, she just likes listening to my theme in the car, and she knows when daddy's got to go to work. You know what I mean? But they do enjoy they do enjoy watching the matches. They cheer for me when I win. And everybody's been real. So they've been real supportive. They understand that when I leave, it's not because I necessarily want to, but this is my job. This is what I have to do. So I'm going to be away, but I spend as much time as I can while I'm here. And it's, it's a team effort. If anybody was upset or it was damaging in any way, then I'd stop tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because I do this to take care of them, and if that wasn't helping, then I find something else to do.
Absolutely. Has any of them shown any sort of proclivity or inclination towards wrestling at all? Or are they still just kind of the stage where it's like, you haven't seen that yet?
My oldest daughter, she kind of hops back and forth as kids do. But she'll say one day she wants to teach art. She'll say one day she wants to play basketball, and then just like last week she's like, oh, I want to be a wrestler too. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just wait till you want to do something else. You know what I mean? Like, if it's something that she decides later on in life she really wants to commit to, I know the trainers, I know the people to send her to make sure she's skilled enough, to make sure she's safe, and to make sure she's got the best path to success possible. But it's like it's pretty hard hustle. You know what I mean? Like I prefer you not get dropped on your head for a living. You know what I mean? So, but we'll see what she wants to do.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Are there any young up and coming wrestlers that you have your eye on that you're really impressed by so far, and that you're really just looking at them saying, okay, this is the future of wrestling?
There's so many. And honestly, I hate doing these because I always forget an obvious one, and people see me and they're like, "Oh man, why didn't you?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, dude." Like, there's just only so many. But obviously, the world right now is talking about Trish Adora as they should be, Lee Moriarty as they should be, Darius Lockhart as they should be. You've got, and of course, I'm going to talk about my guys: Khan, Moses, O'Shea, Ron Hunt. You've got Nicole Savoy, Holodead, Willow Nightingale. There's so many talented men and women. Jordan Blade too. I'm trying to think of the ones just off the top of my head. Savannah Evans and Impact. Like, there's just so much talent around. And I couldn't, can't leave out, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ray Starks. You got, Jonathan Gresham. There's just so many people. Chris Bay. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so many talented men and women that are going to be in this sport for a very long time, and are going to be able to take the torch, take the mantle, and just continue to push and continue to open even more doors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love all of those names, 100%. Is there any wrestler that you would like to have a match with that you haven't yet, but that's on your bucket list, so to say?
Yes. We had a tag team match, but I want the one-on-one, and that's Minoru Suzuki. I wasn't able, when he was in his U.S. tour, to get it, but that's one that I want. I want one with Okada as well. There's a lot of people, right, that you hear these reputations, that all of these accolades, all of that stuff. And to me, the way I grew up, something that my dad always told me: until they prove it to you, no one's reputation means a damn thing. They either prove it to you, or that's just not who they are. And so hearing that, seeing who people are calling the very best in the world, I hear that and go, okay, show me, prove it to me. Let me see what best in the world looks like. You know what I mean? So you've got guys like that. You've got guys like Ospreay. So many talented people. But yeah, Omega too. All of the hype, all of the bravado, all of the brashness, the arrogance. You know what I mean? Those are people like that you would love to just punch in the face and see just how good they really are. You know what I mean? So I'm excited for a lot of potential matchups and opportunities that may be coming, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. What is your prediction for the business in 2022? As we've talked way earlier in this interview about all of the different changes happening just across all of the promotions, is there anything you can actually predict that you think will happen in the next year?
As far as what?
The
like there's
anything that you can foresee right now, even with all of the changes going on, that you're thinking, okay, I have a feeling this is what's going to take place just within the wrestling industry itself.
I feel as though maybe throughout the pandemic, the independents sort of calmed down a bit. I feel like right before the independents seemed as hot as they've ever been, the pandemic sort of shut that down. But I feel like going into 2022, and as we get further along through this, especially with all of the talent that's out there. The independents are going to be back where they were. And with that, I think even without being in a major company, there's going to be the opportunity for people to make a lot of cash, even on the independents. So I feel as though a lot of people will be able to sort of supplement anything that they've lost with the ability to just be busier and have more shows to do.
What's one thing about yourself that you feel people would be surprised to know about?
I think kind of just how goofy I am and how much I like to joke with people. I'm someone who's very confrontational by nature, you know what I mean? But and maybe this is a part of that joking that I do. Like I mess with people, man. Like I joke with people. I rib people, not like in the crazy way. But that's just how I grew up. You know what I mean? I some of the closest people to me, we make fun of every day. You know what I mean? We just talk trash, poke fun, you know what I mean? But that's because I'm comfortable enough with them and know them well enough to know that they understand that I'm joking, that, this is family. This is just what we do. And so a lot of people, that aren't used to that get really, really mad at me. You know what I mean? That we get like, you always, I'm just like, bro, it's all good, man. I'm just joking. You know what I mean? Like people really get hot, you know what I mean? But, that's just me, man. Like, and I always try to tell people that get upset, like, look, if I didn't like you, I wouldn't say anything. Right. If I really, was like, if we weren't vibing, I just wouldn't say anything to you. It would be the handshake. Hey, how are you? Okay. And move it on. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if I'm talking trash, if I'm on you, you know what I mean? Then, we're good. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, and I expect it back. So don't anybody think like, it's one-sided. I fully expect, what I'm saying, to get it back. And, just have fun, because at the end of the day, when we're all done wrestling, man, the venues won't matter. The titles won't matter. The only thing that we're going to have is the stories and the bonds that we made. So that's just how I make mine.
Are you a practical joker at all? Like, do you play practical pranks on people, or are you just straight like...
No, just no, because like that, like when you start involving like people's property and stuff like that, that's when it gets kind of dicey. Nah, we just talk trash. You know what I mean? Like if I see you and you got ashy elbows, you know what I'm saying, I'm on you. You know what I'm saying? If your pants are too tight, I'm on you. You know what I'm saying? Like just stuff like that. You know what I mean? I'll be like. I'll look across the ring and just be holding some lotion, like, you all right? Like stuff like people be like, come on, man. I'm like, like we were just in Baltimore. You get out of the shower, you hit that cold air, you dry up pretty quick. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
But it'd be like, hey, I see you struggling out here, boy. You struggling, huh? You're like this stuff like that. And it's gotten to the point where like a lot of the minority talent on the roster in ROH do it now. Like we'll get each other. Like, so you're never safe. You know what I'm saying? So you always got to be, you always got to be lotioned up. You always got to be ready to go. You know what I'm saying? Because people are looking at you. But that's the environment that I try to create, man. It's just one where everybody's having fun. Everybody can talk trash, and you know what I mean? And just enjoy what it is that we do.
Yes. So note to self, stay hydrated and moisturized around Shane Taylor and crew.
At all times. At all times. If we catch you out here lacking, it's going to be, you got some hurt feelings.
Gotta keep it moisturized. Seriously, it's hard out here, especially on the East Coast. I totally feel you 100%. So funny. What is one thing that you really, really hope to accomplish in the next year? Whether it's in wrestling or not, if it's outside of wrestling, that's even more so, the prerogative.
Right. I want to be able to be in a position to help sponsor other athletes as well. There's a lot of us who don't get to have the international opportunities that our counterparts get, to get the exposure, to get the platforms. Something that I'm already doing at VIP Wrestling is being able to be in the ring, especially with young Black talent that a lot of people may not know in Texas, and being able to get in the ring with them and give them a hell of a match and give them a sort of launching pad in this area to be able to go out and get more eyes and get more bookings, make more cash, things like that. I enjoy using my platform to be able to do that and share that with them. And, you know, if anybody who hasn't seen them, you know, gets to, because of that match, and they get to make, you know, get to put some more money in their pocket, then even better. I think personally for me, I want to be able to achieve the goal that I set out to achieve in Ring of Honor. And that is becoming a world champion, being the face of a company, proving that you can have Black talent that's unapologetic about who they are, proud of who they are. They aren't taking steps back to, you know, make themselves less dangerous or you know, even using that perception of, they simply just get to be themselves, and improve that not only our fans and our culture will embrace it, but other people will as well. I think I checked off every box that I could in Ring of Honor to be able to do that. It simply just wasn't something that, you know, people wanted at the time. Not the fans, but other people. But it is what it is. And now we're in a situation where I potentially get to do that elsewhere, you know, so that's going to be the goal, is going to continue to push towards that and be a top guy and prove that, you know, that height, weight, shape, whatever, that I have the ability to lead a company and do so very well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Texas, and it appears that the Texas wrestling scene is just booming right now. There's so much talent coming out of the state, and so many promotions that are around and really just cultivating the talent and cultivating the scene and keeping it, you know, where it is, or rather elevating it. What are your thoughts about the Texas wrestling scene right now, and where do you see that going in the next couple of years?
It's incredible. For a while there, you know, you had just about everybody who was doing anything was from here. You know, you've got Starks, Lee, me, Ray Rowe. You know, I mean, you've got so many talented people. And for a while there, when we all kind of got signed, things went away. People were still crushing it, you know what I mean? But Texas is so big, it seemed to be sort of like a world unto itself. But that's credit to the men and women who continue to crush it on the independents while we were elsewhere. And they've absolutely made sure that this scene has stayed vibrant. Guys like Barrett Brown, Gino Medina, you got Ryan Davidson, you've got Edge Stone, you've got the bounty hunter, Keith, you know, Lamont Williams, you know, you've got Dante Smiley, you've got so many talented individuals, just crushing it, and making sure that the eyes that are on these scenes stay popping, stay vibrant, and it's only going to continue to get better as more talent comes back, you know. And is going to be able to present even more, you know, dream matches and dream scenarios and put on big shows. So it's going to be fun.
I really like that. I really like to hear that. What is your advice for anyone that wants to get into wrestling, particularly at a time like this, where, as we stated before, things are in flux? It's exciting, but there's a lot in flux all across the board. So if you had a talent come to you and say, Shane, I want to do what you do. I want to be a wrestler. I want to be a champion. How do I do that? What would you tell them at this moment?
You have to have a support system around you of people who truly want the best for you, not who can just see what you can do for them. They truly have to have your best interest at heart. You have to have an undying, unwavering confidence in yourself and your ability. Wrestling is a lot like sales. You're going to hear no 99 times, but you still have to be on your A game for that 100th time, because that could be the opportunity that you need that's going to make or break your career, right? So you constantly have to be on your game mentally as well as physically. And then, of course, there is making sure that you understand the line between someone trying to take advantage of you and making sure you understand when you need to stand up for yourself. Because what a lot of people tend to do is they'll label people hard to work with when they stand up for themselves or they speak their mind, especially Black talent. And what they'll do is they'll go, oh, well, they're just hard to work with. No, I'm hard to take advantage of. And I caught you in some bullshit and told you about yourself. You know what I mean? And usually once that happens, it's, oh, well, I go, no, just tell the truth. You thought it was sweet. I showed you that it wasn't, and now your feelings are hurt. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean I'm hard to work with. It doesn't mean that, you can't be coached or take criticism. It simply is what it is. You stood up for yourself, as you should in this sport, because people will only do what you allow them to do, and they will only go so far. So that would be my advice: is if you can do those things and put in the work and put in the time, you'll be able to have a good career. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be signed somewhere. That's not guaranteeing anything. It's simply, if you can have that, you have a pretty good chance at doing very well in this sport.
Lovely words. Excellent advice, in my opinion. Mr. Shane Taylor, thank you so very much. It has been an honor to meet you. Finally, I've been waiting for a while for this interview. I'm so glad that we had the chance to talk. And I look forward, and I'm sure everyone watching looks forward to seeing what you do next, to seeing what Shane Taylor Promotions does next, and hoping that everything works well with Ring of Honor. But we'll keep the faith, and we know that things are going to be just fine with you and Shane Taylor Promotions. So thank you for everything that you do, and we love seeing y'all in the ring.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.